Hello, this is Paul from Reloading123. Thank you for signing back in. I appreciate it. This installment of Reloading, we are going to talk about powder scales and how to actually measure specific weight of powder. In the previous installment or movie, we actually talked about actual measures on how to dispense powder, as well as dyes and presses in addition to the introduction and ROI kind of cost analysis. So we're going to dive right in, but first I kind of want to do a few shout outs on this video, take about 20 seconds. I want to thank really Mike and Blaine for the suggestion about upgrading my microphone. Did that, 20 bucks, and hopefully this sounds better. Also Mike, Alex, Gary, and Tom, you guys for really taking a listen and making sure I'm being honest. And then really all the Facebook group members that are kind of chiming in and taking a listen and the encouraging words. So I just wanted to really show that I appreciate you guys and give you a shout out. So without further ado, let's dive right into the meat and potatoes. Okay, so we are talking about reloading scales, or ways to actually measure specific quantities of powder. In the reloading world, we measure in grains of powder, and there are 7,000 grains of powder in a pound. And what you're looking at here on screen is a couple of different measures, which we are going to take apart for you, because something that you purchase is going to be very similar to something on the screen here. And these are they're very subtle differences, but I definitely want to take a moment and just kind of show you what this is all about. So I'm going to take this apart real fast, and then kind of when I put it back together, I'm going to talk to it, okay? Give me just a moment here while I do this, and you'll find that it's very easy. Okay, so this is the basic scale. Actually, you'll see here that it talks about an ounce to grain conversion. It's a little bit dusty on this particular one. I don't use this scale. This was given me by a good friend named Gene. Gene, thank you many years ago for giving this to me. You'll see that basically it's a beam that balances essentially between these, between this scale, this graduations here, using a magnet force essentially to dampen it against this plate here, and then it kind of pivots on these two pins that you can hopefully see here. So really what happens is these two pins end up here. You have to kind of put this in at kind of a little bit of an angle. It drops right down in. And what you do is when you're going to set this up, well, I'll save that for the end, but you're going to put this little, what they call a powder pan holder. And this is a powder pan. You're going to see that I have several different kinds on screen right here. And it doesn't really matter what pan that you use, except first I would use the one that comes with the scale when you're new. If you're kind of an intermediate, you can take any of these pans and you can put them on the scale. Now what's going to happen is if you can't, what they call zero the scale, then you're going to have to switch pans to something lighter or heavier, or unscrew this Phillips head screw and take the little BBs out of the inside. Different size shot. I've seen it a variety of different things, but typically it's different size shot, and it just is housed inside this this compartment here, and you can hear it. So, and take a couple out or add a couple if you have some shot in order to get the pan to level out. So let's just use one of these. I'll kind of talk to you a little bit about these pans and what, maybe some different uses for them, but let's just take a look at this one for example. Okay, let's take a look at something. When you're going to zero this scale, you are going to set all of these different graduations to 0. You're going to, this is going to be let me make sure I'm very clear here. I'm just showing you this for an example. This is going to be, of course, inside your scale like so. You're going to have this pan holder and your powder pan on here. So when you zero this, you are actually looking for this gauge to also read 0. So if you have all zeros on the right hand side of the scale, like you've seen, maybe a a gold gold measure, you're going to have to zero this side of the scale, and you're going to do that using this little disc, and you're going to raise and lower it until this needle actually hits at 0. And that's zeroing the scale, and you do not want to move the scale once you do that, or else you're going to have to re-zero. If you bump it, you're going to need to re-zero. Again, you're going to set all these to 0. You're going to make sure you have this disc turn to the point. What happens is this disc is raising and lowering this side of the scale. So you can see what's happening to the beam. So I'm going to be raising this disc up about that much, which is quite a bit on this particular piece of board, to zero it. So that's going to be zeroing. That's your starting point on this particular type of scale. And then of course when you want to do the 50 grains for your whatever, your 308, you're going to move this to 50. You're going to fill this pan with powder until it balances again at 0. If it is up 1 notch on this scale or down 1 notch on this scale, that is going to be, if it's up, it's plus 1/10. If it's below, it's minus 1/10. So then you're going to actually have to add if you need to increase, or remove some if you need to decrease. Hopefully that's making sense to you. Now, one trick that I do with these scales is I put just the tiniest little bit of graphite in the bottom of these. Both style of these balance beam scales, I will put just the smallest amount of graphite in the back, and that I have found makes the scale do what it's supposed to do a little bit smoother. The other thing that you have to be very, very cognizant of and careful is that with this type of scale, static electricity can affect how it reads. And that's pretty much true with all of scales in general. So any, the plastic garbage bags that have any sort of static electricity, anything like a Ziploc, you want to make sure that is far away from your scale. You may even consider going as far as wiping this assembly down with a, very gently with a, one of those dryer sheets. So this is how this type of scale works. Now to show you, I'm going to, just for example purposes, I'm taking this apart again because I kind of want you to see a straight on shot of this. So we're going to look at this beam somewhat close up. Let's say we want to take the scale and we want it to read, let's say 55.5 grains. Obviously this is you only have 50, 60, 70. So you start at that lowest denominator, so that's 50. You're going to move the singles to 5. So now we're at 55. And if you can look real closely, that's a 0.5. So this is 1/2 a grain, so 1/10. So this is going to be 55.5 would be 55 5/10 of a grain. So that's how you'd set this right hand side of the scale, and then on the pan you're going to pour your powder until it balances over here on the left hand side. Does that make sense? Good. I appreciate your reply. So now I'm going to show you this other, and it's very subtle differences, but I wanted to show you just because I had them both. I've gone back and forth between these scales a few times. I can't really decide on which one I like better. It always seems like, and it could be operator error over the course of time, but essentially this is very similar. As you can see, it's also a balance beam style with the same kind of rod over on this side and the same copper piece or looks like copper piece that is dampened using some sort of magnetic field inside here. So again, but one of the main differences on this particular scale, and I'm going to take this apart for you. First of all, it comes apart a lot easier because I don't have to kind of twist things. It's just the way it gets to the single digits and the tenths. So on this particular scale, and I know I was pretty clear earlier, but just to be clear, all of our scales and all of your recipes are in grains of powder. Even though the front of this is going to have an ounce to grain conversion, this one over here, also an ounce to grain conversion. You really don't use anything in the way of ounces in reloading. At least I haven't. Even your bullets are in grains, your powder is in grains. You weigh your cases. If you're an advanced reloader, it's always, you just focus on grains. So in this situation, you can see my graduations don't include the 50 number, but it's pretty obvious that the 50 is the larger digit between the 0 and the 100. Then you're going to loosen the set screw that's on top. Maybe you can see that nylon set screw. And across this, there's like a little barrel right here that you turn. And that barrel is going to go up and down this scale. So I'm going to see, and you see that little black line at the tip of my finger? That's going to be the line that's the indicator. So you're basically going to, and then on the right hand side here, you can see that there's a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3. Hopefully you can see that. And with that, you're going to basically, you're going to take a look here, and it's pretty obvious that's on a 4 grains, and then I'm running past the 0. So the line actually lines up with the bottom of this scale. So really that's about it for the scale itself. I kind of want to go into a little bit of just touch on these different powder pans, and these are 3 different ones. This is a Hornady. I couldn't even tell you what this one is. I just noticed that I paid $1 somewhere for this pan, and this particular pan actually has a built-in powder funnel, and maybe you can see that. Basically, you can pour it in the pan and then put it right in your case. I use this rarely. But when I was using 204 and I didn't have a proper funnel, it was actually the only one that I had that worked. So it just so happens that that's what I've been using lately. But any one of these works great. All of them, you can basically, you put the powder in the pan, it sits right on top of the stand, and then you go about your business, putting your powder inside and then weighing it. And then you pour this, typically you'll pour it into a funnel like this, and you'll pour it in the funnel and right into the case. Let's talk a little bit about another style. These styles are becoming very popular because they are relatively inexpensive. I can see there's a little bit of a reflection here. I'm just going to open this up for you. This is an electronic scale. Boy, I tell you, for 50 bucks, this thing is going to get me spoiled quick. I just got this at Christmas. I've been old school all this time using the balance beam style scale. This particular scale is extremely slick. It's easy to set up. It's easy to zero. And for example, let me just show you what that looks like. So we'll turn it on. Yeah, hopefully you can see some numbers pop up on the screen. And as it's doing its thing, it's a little bit cold in my shop. These scales are a little more sensitive to cold. They really want to be at room temperature. It says it right in the manual. As you can see, it's measuring as 0.0 grains. Of course, that is incorrect. Well, it's correct because nothing is on it. But the way you want to zero it is with the pan on, because all you want to be measuring is the powder. So obviously this pan weighs 158.1 grains. We're going to zero it out, and then you pour your powder in and you're ready to go. Pretty simple. One thing I want to talk to you about also is check weights. This particular scale is extremely slick because it comes with its own 10-gram check weight. But as you know, we're measuring in grains, not grams. So in order to get this check weight just right, we would actually have to put it on here and change the units to grams. The fact that, and that's not difficult, we can change it right here using this button, not a problem, it's very easy. But what you can do is you can purchase from RCBS, and you should be seeing a close-up of this right now, a check weight kit. And this is really just to make sure your scale is doing what it's supposed to do. And these little pieces basically each have a measurement on it. This happens to be 20 grains. This scale kit is in grains, which makes it kind of nice. So it measures at 20. Obviously you can see the scale says 20.1. And that brings up a really good point. All of these scales, regardless of manufacturer, is only going to be accurate to plus or minus 1/10, which is exactly what you see here. So we'll see what happens when we pull this off. I found the scale to be pretty darn accurate. And like I said, it's cold in here. So let's just take a look. Put it right back on again. That's still at 20.1. So I believe this check weight to be completely accurate. So let's just take a look. Here's another 20 grain check weight. Let's just put this on here and take a look and see what we get. 40.2. So it's measuring each one of these obviously at 20.1. And here's a 10, I believe, if I can read the full thing. Yep, 10. So with all 50 grains of check weights on there, you have exactly 50 grains. So it looks like it gets a little more accurate when it gets higher in the scale, but again, plus or minus 1/10, you can't ask for any more than that. That's what any scale is going to give you. These little pieces here, you should be seeing these on the screen a little more close up. Each one of them has its own weight. So this one's going to be the 5 grain piece, and then of course it goes down and down and down. So each one of these are measured at RCBS for you to make sure that your scale is doing what it's supposed to do. Again, this scale, I just turned it on. It needs to acclimate a little bit. It also doesn't like the cold. My shop is probably all of about 50 degrees. So it's definitely cold in. So this is a digital scale, very slick. This could get you spoiled real fast. I would make sure that, and the fact that it already has the check weight in it is really cool. And we can change this pretty quick. That's it right there. So this is measuring now in grams. This is a 10 gram check weight, and it's at 10.010 grams. There you go. So that's the electronic scale. You know, while I've got you, I'm going to just kind of go right into powder funnel. I have got essentially, well, let's look at, I have too many probably, but here is 5 different kinds. This one was one I was just experimenting with to be able to do it right off the scale. Unfortunately, this had me making large adjustments to my the beads in the bottom of the carrier. This is a new style funnel. Now, not really new to the more advanced community, but this is a very nice funnel. It's weighted at the bottom. It sits nicely on the very top of your case, where some of these plastic ones tend to get a little wobbly. It doesn't create any kind of static. The powder doesn't get stuck inside. And this is actually specifically made for the 20 caliber. So I told you I was reloading 204 Ruger. I was having trouble finding one of these that really fit. This particular one I bought specifically for that. Not only does this fit nice, that 204 Ruger case is very small, and it actually balances nice on top of the case. So the funnel is your ticket for putting the powder inside the case. So when you've got your case, you're ready to put the powder in it, you are going to put this funnel on top. You're going to pour your powder out of the pan inside, fill the case, and then of course you're done. And that's as simple as powder funnels get, but I just wanted to show you that before I turned the camera off. Hopefully that makes plenty of sense for you. Thank you for tuning in to Reloading123. If you have any questions, please send them to me. I will respond. Thanks for your time.